Welcome to Pumping Python. My name is Jacob Itegboje, and this is how to make a calculator. Time to write some code. I will open up the Explorer and a terminal. Control tilde on the keyboard will do that. On Windows without subsystem, linux./make python tdd.ps1 calculator as the name of the project. On the other operating systems, it will be /make python tdd.sh. Calculator for the name of the project. Enter to run it, and it will make the folders and files that are needed. Install the packages from the requirements.txt, then run the first test. When I hit Control or Command and click on the file name, it opens it in the editor. I'll change true to false to make the test pass. I have a warning here for the spelling of the class name. I will make the first C in calculator capital, and the warning goes away. Then hit enter 3 times after the self.assert false line, backspace twice, hashtag to do to keep track of the work I'm going to do. Hashtag test addition. Hashtag test subtraction. Hashtag test multiplication. And hashtag test division. I'll come up here to test failure, change that to test_addition. Change the assert false to assert equal. This takes two values to see if they're the same. One of them is reality, the other one is my expectation. In this case, reality will be a call to source.calculator.add. Parentheses 0, 1, and my expectation will be 1 because 0 plus 1 is 1. But I get a name error. Name source is not defined. I'll add this to the list of exceptions encountered. Hashtag name error. At the top of the file, enter, then add import source.calculator. The terminal shows an attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute add. Another one for the list of exceptions encountered. Hashtag attribute error. This line is like an address. Source is the source folder. Calculator is calculator.py. I'll bring that to the editor on the left side. Add is something inside the file. I'll close the Explorer, then put the name in here, add. This gives me a name error. Name add is not defined. I'll assign it to none. The terminal shows a type error. Non-type object is not callable. I'll make this a function to make it callable. def add, parentheses, colon at the end, enter, return, remove the equal sign, none. Another type error. Add takes 0 positional arguments, but 2 were given. I'll add this to the list of exceptions encountered. Hashtag type error. Then put X and Y in the parentheses. The terminal shows an assertion error. None is not equal to 1. In the test, 0 and 1 are passed as inputs. The expectation is 1. Add currently returns none. When I change it to match the expectation, the test passes. Time for victory lap. The add function currently passes the test but does not meet the actual requirement. It returns 1 every time it is called. It does not care about the inputs. I wanted to take those inputs, do a calculation, and return the result. I'll add an assertion to show the problem. Enter here self.assert equal parentheses enter source.calculator.add parentheses -1, comma 1, a comma at the end. My expectation is 0 because -1 plus 1 is 0. The terminal shows an assertion error. 1 is not equal to 0. The add function returns 1. The test expects 0. When I change this to match, I get another assertion error. 0 is not equal to 1 for the previous assertion that was passing. When I change it to return x plus y, the terminal shows a passing test. I want to test this function with random numbers. That way I do not have to keep adding examples. At the top of the file, enter import random. This is a module from the Python standard library that is used to make fake random numbers. Enter after the colon, x equal sign, random.randint. Parentheses -1, comma 1. This will give me a random number from -1 up to and including 1. -1 to represent negative numbers, 0 to represent itself, and 1 to represent positive numbers. I'll hit Ctrl or Command C on the keyboard to make a copy of the line, then Ctrl or Command V to paste the copy below. Change the name of the second one to Y. Enter twice after the line, add self.assert equal. Parentheses, enter source.calculator.add. Parentheses, x, comma, y, a comma at the end of the line. My expectation on the next line will be x plus x because I want to see the test fail. I get a passing test, which is misleading. When I hit save, I'll also get random failures. This happens because the range of numbers I'm using to test is small. When I change the expectation to x plus y, the test passes with no more random failures. I will remove these other assertions because they are now covered by the one that uses random numbers. There's some duplication here. If I want to change the range of numbers I'm using to test, I have to do it in 2 places. Once for x, so -10 to +10 to use a bigger range. Do the same thing here for y, -10, +10. The test is still passing, that's good. To remove the duplication, I will add a function. Enter 3 times def, a_random_number, parentheses, colon at the end. Enter return random.randint, parentheses, -1, comma 1. Then come down here to test addition, change x to be the result of calling a_random_number, parentheses. The test is still green. I'll make y also the result of calling a_random_number, parentheses. Now I can change the range of numbers in just one place. -10 to +10, for example. The test is still green. I can go as big as the computer can handle. So -10 raised to the power of 100,000, for instance. Up to +10 raised to the power of 100,000. The test is still green. It just takes longer to run than it did before. I'll go back to -10 to +10 as the range. Then come down here to the to-do list, remove test addition. Go back to the end of test addition, enter twice backspace def test _ subtraction. Parentheses self, a colon at the end. Enter cell, nope. X is the result of calling a_random_number, parentheses. Make a copy of the line, paste it below, change the second one to Y. Enter twice, add self.assert equal. Parentheses, enter source.calculator.subtract. Parentheses, x comma y, a comma at the end of the line, and my expectation is x minus y. The terminal shows an attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute subtract. I'll add this to calculator.py, enter 3 times, add subtract. I get a name error. Name subtract is not defined. I'll assign it to none. The terminal shows a type error. Non-type object is not callable. This is familiar. I'll make it a function. def subtract, parentheses, colon at the end. Enter, return, remove the equal sign, none. Another type error. Subtract takes 0 positional arguments, but 2 are given. In the parentheses, x comma y. And I get an assertion error. None is not equal to the number on the right. When I hit save to run the test again, I get different numbers on the right because I'm using random numbers to test. The test expects x minus y. The subtract function returns none. I will make it match. Return x minus y. And both tests are passing. Before I remove test subtraction from the to-do list, I have some duplication. I declare x as the result of calling a random number. Do the same thing for y. And I have these two declarations in test addition as well. I can use the same numbers for both tests. To remove this duplication, I will add class attributes. Enter twice before def, go back up, x equals sign a_random_number, parentheses. Make a copy of the line, paste it below, Control or Command V to paste. Change the second one to Y. And to use these, I will say self.x and self.y, the same way I do self.assert for the assert methods. X becomes self.x. Y becomes self.y. And in the call to the add function, x becomes self.x. I'll change y to self.x because I want to see the test fail. I get an assertion error when I change the second one to self.y. The test passes. I'll change the expectation to self.x plus self.y. Green again. I will remove the x and y variables because they are no longer used. I'll do the same thing for test subtraction. X becomes self.x, y becomes self.y. The test is still green. In the call to subtract, I will change that to self.x, comma, self.x so I can see the test fail. I get an assertion error when I change the second one to self.y. The test passes. I'll change the expectation to self.x minus self.y. And still green, I can take out the x and y variables. They're no longer used. Come down here to the to-do list, remove test subtraction. Then go back up to the closing parentheses here, enter twice backspace, DEF, test underscore multiplication. Parentheses self, a colon at the end. Enter self.assert equal. Parentheses enter source.calculator.multiply. Parentheses self.x, comma self.y, a comma at the end. On the next line, my expectation is self.x times self.y. The terminal shows an attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute multiply. Using what I know so far, I will add a function. Enter 3 times def multiply. Parentheses x comma y, a colon at the end. On the next line, return x times y. The terminal shows all 3 tests are passing. I will remove test multiplication from the to-do list. Go back up to this closing parentheses, enter twice backspace def, test underscore division. Parentheses self, a colon at the end. Enter after the colon, self.assert equal. Parentheses enter source.calculator.divide. Parentheses self.x, comma self.y, a comma at the end of the line. Enter self.x divided by self.y. The terminal shows an attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute divide. Go back to calculator.py, hit enter 3 times def divide. parentheses x comma y, a colon at the end, enter return x divided by y. The terminal shows a passing test, but this is misleading. To show the problem, I'll change the range of numbers to a smaller range, -1 to +1. And I get a zero division error, division by 0, when y is 0. In mathematics, dividing by 0 is not defined. In Python, it raises this exception. Since the error is random, I'll add a line that will fail every time the test runs. After test division, enter after the colon, add source.calculator.divide, parentheses self.x, comma 0. This gives me a zero division error. I'll comment out these 4 lines. Select them, Control or Command /. Now every time the test runs, I get a zero division error. Exceptions like zero division error or any of the others encountered so far break the execution of a program. This means that nothing past the line of code that raised the exception will run. I have to take care of this. I will use the assertRaises method from the unittest or test case class to do this. It checks that the line of code within its context raises the exception it is given. Here's what that looks like. Enter after the colon with self.assertRaises. Parentheses, I'll use the wrong exception, assertion error. A colon at the end. Then come down to the next line, Control or Command right square bracket to move it to the right. Enter to add some space. I still have a zero division error, but when I change this assertion error to the right exception, the test passes, showing that this line of code raises this exception. I'll come down here to remove the comment, Control or Command /. I still have a problem with self.y being randomly 0. This will cause a random failure and I do not want that in the test. To make sure it does not happen, I will use a while statement. Enter twice here or once, tab twice, while self.y. Two equal signs, 0, a colon. Enter after the colon, self.y equal sign a underscore random underscore number parentheses. Enter backspace else colon. Select the assertion and move it to the right by hitting Control or Command right square bracket. The terminal shows all tests are passing with no more random failures. What this does is it checks if self.y is 0. If it is, it will assign it to the result of a random number. It will do this check and assignment as long as self.y is 0, just continually repeating. And if self.y is not 0 at any point in time, it will move to the else block to check that the division calculation is correct. Since the test is passing and self.y is 0 at this point, I can add this line that I know will fail to the while statement. Enter after the colon, source.calculator.divide. parentheses self.x, comma self.y. Hit save a few times, and I get a zero division error when self.y is randomly 0. This means I can add the assertRaises here with self.assertRaises. Parentheses, use another wrong exception like name error. Put the colon at the end. Come down to the next line, Control or Command right square bracket to move it to the right. Hit save a few times. I still get a zero division error when self.y is 0, but when I change the exception to the right one, the test passes with no more random failures. I will take out the other assertRaises block because it's now part of the while loop. To review, this while loop checks if self.y is 0. If it is, it will run these 3 lines of code, and it will keep running them as long as self.y is 0. If self.y is not 0 at any point, it will run the rest of the code. Since all tests are passing, I'm going to change the range of numbers to a bigger range. Use -10, +10. Still green, I'll use a much bigger range, -10 raised to the power of 1 million. Up to +10 raised to the power of 1 million. All tests are still passing, it just takes much longer to run. I'll go back to -10 up to and including +10. All right, I will take out the to-do list. Then close testcalculator.py. I want to write the solution without looking at the test. Select everything in calculator.py, hit delete. See if you can tell what exceptions will happen as I go along. Right now I have an attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute subtract. I will add the name. I get a name error. Name subtract is not defined. I will assign this to none. Type error. Non-type object is not callable. I'll make this a function, def subtract parentheses colon at the end, enter, return, remove the equal sign, none. Another type error. Subtract takes 0 positional arguments, but 2 were given. A, B in the parentheses. This gives me an assertion error. None is not equal to this number. I do not know what this means, so I will return A, B to see the difference between the inputs and the expected output. I have 10 and -4 as inputs. The expected output is 14. This looks like subtraction. The name of the function is also subtract. 10 minus -4 is 10 plus 4, which is 14. 1 minus 6 is -5. 3 minus -10 is 3 plus 10, which is 13. -9 minus 3 is -12. Return A minus B. The terminal shows an attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute multiply. In calculator.py, I'll hit enter 3 times after the return line, add def multiply, parentheses, colon at the end. Enter, return none. The terminal shows a type error. Multiply takes 0 positional arguments, but 2 were given. In the parentheses, a comma b. I have an assertion error. None is not equal to this number. Return a comma b. Another assertion error. -3, -1. The output is 3. This is multiplication, and the expectation here shows self.x times self.y. The name of the function is multiply. -3 times -1 is 3 times 1, which is 3. 7 times -6 is -42. -5 times -8 is 5 times 8, which is 40. -1 times 1 is -1. Return a times b. The terminal shows an attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute divide. Hit enter 3 times def divide. Parentheses a comma b, a colon at the end, enter, return a comma b. The terminal shows an assertion error, zero division error not raised. When I hit save, it shows another assertion error, -4 as the input with -1 as the expected output. This is division. The expectation here is self.x divided by self.y. The name of the function is divide. And 4 divided by -4 is -1. -8 divided by 1 is -8. 1 divided by -6 is -0.16 repeating. -2 divided by 1 is -2. 3 divided by 1 is 3. 5 divided by 7 is 0.7142857 repeating. Return a divided by b. Another attribute error. Module source.calculator has no attribute add. The last 3 return statements all match the names of the functions. I will use that here. Enter 3 times def add. Parentheses a comma b, colon at the end. Enter, return a plus b. And the terminal shows all 4 tests are passing. Lovely. Bring back test calculator.py to the editor. Close the Explorer. And close the terminal. I forgot to add zero division error to the list of exceptions encountered. All right. I ran the following tests for a program that performs the arithmetic operations. I test addition, test subtraction, test multiplication, and test division. I also encountered the following exceptions: assertion error, name error, attribute error, type error, and zero division error. Would you like to test how to pass values? I will see you in the next one.